Hi, Kim. I'm getting kind of stressed out here.
Why is that, Colby?
It's time to film a new Teaching World History video, and I can't think of a good joke for the opening.
Have you thought of any puns we could make?
I'm coming up with nothing. I don't know, houses have frames? I don't want the joke to be too obvious, you know?
I'm not sure, Colby. What's the topic for the video?
Frames.
Sorry, Colby, I've got nothing.
Alright, we'll just have to let the video team figure it out in post-production.
One thing you've probably realised, no matter how long you've been teaching history, is there's a whole lot of history out there. And most of it will be unfamiliar to your students. At times, you might feel a little like you're a wilderness guide, reflecting on the old adage, you can't see the forest for the trees. As you trek through the strange and massive landscape of the past, you might be worried your students will get lost in the trees that make up WHP's content: names, dates, events, and places. How do you show students the forest?
That's where the frames come in. Imagine studying a forest with your students. I know we're history teachers, but just bear with me. What if students looked at rainfall patterns in the forest one day, different kinds of trees the next, and the way that animals living in the trees spread tree seeds around on another day? They are all ways of looking at the forest, but studying them separately and then bringing them together will help you understand the whole ecosystem. Historical narratives are part of a kind of ecosystem as well. And because humans are storytellers, our narratives help us understand the shape of past events. Frames are like filters or lenses that help us interpret those events.
Without stories, history is just one tree after another. Frames help us build narratives that let us see and describe a forest. The thing is, even the whole forest won't look the same to everybody. There's a danger in telling only a single story. In WHP, we use 3 frame narratives: communities, networks, and production and distribution.
The communities frame looks at how humans have structured our societies. We've organized ourselves in many types of communities, including states, religions, and even virtual communities online. The communities frame narrative suggests that, throughout history, human communities have generally grown and frequently changed.
The networks frame examines how humans connect to and interact with one another. In general, humans have built larger and larger networks over time. Today, technologies like the internet enable a global system of exchange. But within this bigger pattern, smaller networks remain important.
The production and distribution frame narrative explores how we make and move the things we use. Over time, humans have become increasingly sophisticated in the ways we produce and distribute goods and tools. But this increasing sophistication has created new problems.
As you can see, each of the 3 frame narratives tells a big global story about change over time. Other world history courses might have many more frames, things like society, environment, or economy. But in WHP, we intentionally chose just 3 because we think students will be able to more deeply engage with a smaller number of frames. We chose these 3 carefully, not only because they're especially useful for telling stories at a local, regional, and of course global scale, but also because they raise issues that are very relevant for students trying to understand their own lives in this broad global history. But we are certainly not saying these are the right frames or the only frames. In fact, we expect students, and you, to evaluate and question these narratives.
These big narratives can help you make connections among many different events. But you can also use multiple frames to understand the same event. When you filter past events through a different frame, you change your understanding of those events. Let's look at an example. The Haitian Revolution was a complex world historical event. Students can get lost as they navigate all the different causes, consequences, people, empires, and ideas. But by applying the three frames to this one event, you can help your students identify long-term connections to other events and trends around the world.
Viewed through the community's frame narrative, your account of the Haitian Revolution might focus on the social hierarchy of Saint-Domingue and how ideas about sovereignty, liberty, and equality made their way from the revolution in France to communities of enslaved people in the Caribbean.
The networks frame, on the other hand, might highlight the connections among free and enslaved people who carried these new ideas around the Atlantic world and helped light the spark of rebellion.
Using the production and distribution frame, you might explore the material aspects of the revolution, how its sugar and coffee made Saint-Domingue the most lucrative French colony, and how this system depended on the money and resources produced by a plantation system built on the labour of hundreds of thousands of enslaved Africans.
By presenting students with big-picture historical stories, the frame narratives provide a cohesive backdrop against which students build their understanding of the past. Using a chronological narrative for each frame, we introduce students to a big, global, and overgeneralized picture of historical events and processes. This helps them contextualize, organize, connect, and evaluate the historical data, names, facts, and events they encounter at smaller scales throughout the course.
So, how should you use the frames? It's like any new device or tool, really. Practice. First, introduce them early and use them often. Students might struggle at first, but our WHP teachers tell us that if they consistently incorporate the frames early on, it really starts to pay off in the second half of the course. As students get comfortable applying the frames, they start to make surprising connections as they sift through all the stuff of history. We recommend introducing the frames with 4 introductory videos featuring historian Bob Bain. You'll find these videos, one on each of the 3 frames, plus an overall description of the concept of frames, in the opening era or unit of the WHP courses. Professor Bain then returns in each era and unit to update the frame narratives. Another way to introduce the frames is with WHP's Draw the Frames activity. It's simple, creative, and pretty fun. In this activity, students create visual representations of each frame. Many teachers have students redraw the frames for each new unit. As they redraw the frames, students are building the frame narrative for themselves over time.
Understanding the frames is crucial, but that doesn't mean you and your students should accept them as the one and only way to view history. You should treat WHP's 3 frame narratives with the same scrutiny as any other historical narrative. As students encounter new evidence, WHP asks them to consider whether the things they are learning support, extend, or challenge the frame narratives. By support, we mean, does this new information generally fit within the frame narrative that we have provided? Maybe the new information actually extends the frame narrative. This is a world history class, and the frames are overgeneralized. Students might often find themselves adding to, complicating, and extending the frame narratives. As students get more comfortable with the concept of frames, they should also become more skeptical of the narratives we've provided. New information might contradict the general narrative. By using new evidence to challenge that narrative, students revise and critique the frame to develop a more usable picture of the past.
Frames can be tough for you and your students to wrap your heads around at first. So, please be sure to visit our community and use the resources of your fellow WHP teachers. It's likely that your question has been asked before.
Well, Kim, we did it. We used that great forest and trees analogy and never resorted to puns.
We've branched out.
Uh-oh.
But stayed rooted in the frame narratives.
Stop.
Don't leave me hanging. Can't think of any?
No. I'm stumped.